And I think one of the beautiful things about the life of St. Augustine is it shows the power of God's grace and the fact that we always need to have hope. Why do I say that? Because St. Augustine, as you know, when he was a young man, he was very far from the faith, very far from the Catholic Church. He was someone who was living an immoral life. And when we meet people in our daily activities, who are far from the church, living an immoral life, sometimes we think that God's grace cannot reach them. But St. Augustine shows us that God's grace is all-powerful. And there's this famous saying that every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. And St. Augustine's life shows us that. He had a past that was sinful and a future that was bright and beautiful because of God's grace. So what it means is we should never discount the power of God's grace. We should never categorize people as irredeemable or beyond the power of God's grace to change them. God can do all things. St. Augustine became a bishop, became a saint, in spite of the fact that for a long period when he was young, he was far from the church and far from God's grace. So it gives us hope for sinners. It gives us joy in the power of God's grace. So I think for me, that's the most beautiful characteristic of the life of St. Augustine. I think one way of deepening your devotion to St. Augustine is learning about him, knowing him. And probably the best way to do that is by reading his writings, some of which can be quite difficult, but I would recommend the Confessions, which is his autobiography, which is not so difficult to read. And that is a beautiful story of his life, written in the first person, written from his perspective. So try to learn by reading the writings of St. Augustine, especially the Confessions. That's a great way to deepen your devotion to your patron saint. Well, my message for this patronal feast that you will have on the 28th of August, on the Feast of St. Augustine, is to remember that we are in this year of prayer as we approach the Great Jubilee, which will begin at Christmas time of this year. The Great Jubilee of redemption of the world by Jesus, in which the entire church will be focusing on that. But in preparation for that Jubilee year, this is a time for prayer. And I think that's my message to all of you participating in the patronal feast on Wednesday, that try to deepen your prayer life during this period between now and Christmas time. Really prepare for the Jubilee year. And thank God for the gift of your parish, the gift of your diocese, for the generosity of your Hermana Mayor, Amelita Tenko, who has done so much to make this a very, very special and wonderful feast day.